Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You may hear my wife cooking breakfast in the background. I'm a little, a little exhausted from staying up late last night to watch UFC 281. I'm just going to react a little bit to what we saw, things about the card that were surprising, things that were not so surprising. And what I'm going to do literally is just scroll through my ESPN app here and talk about the specific fights. Of course, Petrusky got it done over Turman. Um, I like Turman's camp. I was really hoping he was going to win this, but obviously that didn't happen. Petrusky looked really good, kind of dominated him on the ground for most of that fight and controlled him. Molly McCann, after her last couple of fights with those spinning elbow finishes, I was really, really hoping to see her come out here and shine. And she was just not able to do that against Blanchfield. Blanchfield looked amazing. I'm talking utter domination. She came out and did what she had to do and really stopped that hype train of Molly McCann in her tracks, or at least slowed it down a lot. So I got to give her a lot of credit for that, guys. Dominic Reyes. Let's just talk about the pink elephant in the room. What's going on with Dominic Reyes? I mean, this guy has been knocked out more in the last year and a half, 2 years, than just about anybody. I mean, I hate to see it. He's such a high level athlete. This guy was a college football player. Just at one point, fought John Jones to a decision where many thought that Reyes should have won that fight. That's how good of a fighter he is. And now this guy cannot keep from getting knocked out. I mean, if the wind blows the wrong way, he's stiff as a board on the canvas. Man, I don't know what's going on with him. And taking nothing away from Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann is, well, he said last night after the fight, he actually trained for this fight. So I think it's safe to say that the Ryan Spann that we've seen in the past has been more the Clark Kent, not the Superman. That was a good one, as he calls himself. Well, his name's Superman Spann. That's what he calls himself. I thought it was pretty good. But last night he looked like Superman. He said he actually trained for it, and it showed. So it's hard to determine whether this is just Ryan Spann looking his best, from really committing to his training camp for the first time, or whether Dominic Reyes just needs to go, find another job, man. Let's be honest. It mm, seems like if someone looks at him the wrong way these days, he's getting knocked out, and I hate to see that. He's such a good guy and a great athlete as well, but yeah, another vicious knockout of Dominic Reyes last night. Let's move on up the card. Yeah, so when I saw that fight between Brad Riddell and Fiziev, it raised my level of respect for Brad Riddell. I mean, it just, my respect went up here. And Moicano was not having any of that, and I knew Moicano was tough from that, his last fight with Dos Anjos. Um, I mean, if, from what I understand, he took that fight kind of on short notice. Didn't really even have a training camp for it, and Dos Anjos was putting it on Moicano for most of that fight, and Moicano was able to hang around, take a beating. Never was, never got finished. Just a tough, tough, tough individual, and he also had moments of his own, against Dos Anjos, even though he was, completely outmatched in that fight. I'll tell you what, he that must have done him some good, because he came in here last night and he just dominated Brad Riddell. I was pretty surprised about that, because Brad Riddell is a very, very tough individual. But Moicano, and you could tell his post-fight speech as well, that he was he was pretty pumped up about what's happening for the future with him. He wants his name to be in the bright lights, and I think he deserves it after a win like that over a top guy in Brad Riddell. I think you know Moicano deserves to be in that conversation as you know one of these ranked guys. Who's creeping in at the top of this division here. So good job for him. Oh man, Dan Hooker, my man Dan Hooker. This to me was one of the highlights of the card. It was so great to see Dan Hooker get back on in the winning column against Claudio Puelles. I tell you what, as soon as I saw Claudio Puelles lunge for the legs of Dan Hooker more than once, we knew he was going to do it the first time, right? I mean, we knew that was going to happen. We knew that was his game plan. He didn't want to stand up against, a top level striker and finisher like Dan Hooker. And, Claudio obviously respected that about Dan Hooker. So we knew he was going to do it once. He wanted to take the fight to the ground. But as soon as I saw him die for those legs a second time and roll like he was trying to grab an ankle, like he was Ryan Hall or something, I literally was like, ooh, this is not going to be good. Not going to be good for Claudio Puelles. And I was right. Dan Hooker was just way too much for him. He wasn't able to get him down. And I knew that that was going to be the case, that if he was not able to take Dan Hooker down, it was going to be a bad night for him. And it was. And so Dan Hooker was able to finish him. And I felt like a couple of minutes into that fight, Puelles just wasn't there anymore, to be honest. I think he felt something that he didn't like. And I think he was very aware within the first 2 minutes of that fight that it just wasn't going to be his night. That Dan Hooker was not going to be denied. He wasn't able to take him down. Dan Hooker's a big guy for that lightweight division, tall, strong. He trains with a killer team of guys, so he's a veteran. He's not going to be a guy who's easy to take down unless you're someone like an Islam or someone like that who's just on a completely different level with your grappling. Looking back on it now, seeing what I saw last night with Claudio Puelles, that really, um, I mean, not that he doesn't deserve it anyway after what he did to Oliveira, but that really lets you know how good Islam really is. The fact that he schooled Dan Hooker in that fight on the ground and just made him look like an amateur. And then you look at Dan Hooker last night against Claudio Puelles, it's just like, wow, Islam is just really that good. But anyway, that's another conversation. So Dan Hooker's back in the winning column. I was really, really, really glad to see that because Dan has brought us so many amazing fights over the years. Oh man, ah, Edgar, former champion. At one time, Edgar was one of the best, one of the best fighters in the world, hands down. But the everything has its time in the sun, and Father Time is undefeated, as they say. He's getting older. I know that was his last fight last night. I really wanted him to go out with a win, but man, Chris Gutierrez is a problem. That guy's got some serious high level striking, man. He's so many different looks when he's fighting. He's got good spinning attacks. He's crisp. I became a fan of him last night, and it was hard to see Frankie Edgar uh, go out literally almost identically the same way that he went out against Corey Sandhagen with that flying knee straight to the jaw. And I hated to see Frankie Edgar go out like that. I really did. He was classy in defeat as usual. Um, I just didn't want that to be his retirement fight for him to go out like that. But all props to Chris Gutierrez. He's just a class act. I mean, he embraced Frankie Edgar after the fight was over. You could tell that in some ways he kind of hated to have to send him off like that, but you know, you can't blame him. He's in there to win, and it was a great win for him. And Gutierrez is on the map, man. Not as though he wasn't before, but to do that. To even if Frankie Edgar is an older guy, Frankie Edgar is very respected. So the fact that he was able to do that to Frankie Edgar was pretty damn impressive, if I do say so for myself. Moving on up the card, Poirier versus Chandler. This went about exactly. What'd you say, hon? Yeah, Poirier. She's pulling for Poirier. I need to get some more of his hot sauce, by the way. So that's for Christmas. Yeah, as you can see, Christmas is coming up. You see my tree in the background there. My wife and I have worked really hard to make it like a winter wonderland around here. My house is pretty legit right now. I have to take you guys around it and show it to you. Drop a little video at night. My house looks. What does it look like? Looks kind of like Santa's village if you walk around it. Anyway, um, I'm corny like that. Yeah, I like it cozy like that. I'm a hardcore, man's man who loves MMA, but I love my establishment to be very cozy for some reason. You want me to talk? Okay, she's telling me to get back on topic. All right, maybe I should do that. Well, you guys don't mind listening to me ramble a little bit, right? Yeah. All right, so I wouldn't say Poirier dominated. He had moments where Chandler is always in the fight, and Chandler is always dangerous, and that was no exception last night. So he definitely had his moments, but this fight played out kind of like I thought it was going to play out, and I knew that if this got on into the later second round into the third round, this is going to start to favor. I felt like Poirier because he's been known just to set that pace, man, and be relentless with it, and not let up. I knew his boxing is much more crisp, much better than Michael Chandler's. Not that Michael Chandler is not dangerous; he absolutely is. And he's got that killer overhand right that can sleep people. And he had some moments where he clipped Poirier, and I was a little concerned, to be honest, because we saw based on what he did to Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson, and I mean he hurt Oliveira as well in their fight, hurt Gagey. I mean he has the ability to put you on skates and then finish you. But Poirier is not an easy guy to finish. He just never has been, and he was able to hang around, make it through those moments where Chandler kind of had him in trouble there for a minute, and he was able to turn it around. And I knew once he caught him with something significant that it was gonna be night ending, and it was. So Poirier finishes Michael Chandler. I didn't really have a dog in the fight on that one. I like Michael Chandler a lot. I think he's just done an amazing job since he's been in the UFC. A lot of people look at it and say, "Oh, he's losing all his fights, so he's losing most of his fights." Yeah, but I mean, the guy was fast tracked straight to the top, man. He's been fighting nothing but killers. He's been fighting nothing but the very, very best in the division ever since he's come in. Literally, the only person that Chandler has fought that was not in the top five, I think. I'm not sure if Dan Hooker was in the top five when he beat him, but he was close. He was somewhere up there. Um, Tony Ferguson is the only guy that hadn't been in the top five. The rest of the guys that he's fought since he's been in the UFC have been top five guys. So he's been fighting the murderer's row. And so to say he's losing all his fights, like, come on, dude. He's not champion material, at least at this moment. And there's a few guys, a handful of guys in the division that are definitely better. But anyway, Poirier gets it done last night. So it was good to see that. Zhang Weili, this happened exactly how I think most people thought it was going to happen. As far as I had a few moments here or there, but let's get real. You could tell by the boos in the pre-fight conference that people just do not even consider her the champ, especially after that. The way she got the belt, it's just like the most boring fight in existence that she had with Rose Namajunas. You just shouldn't be able to win the title on a performance like that. It's not her first time with the title, but this would have been her first time actually defending the belt. And guess what? She wasn't even able to defend it. So um, she got the belt. You can't take the belt away from her in terms of her once being a champion. But I think it just goes to show um, she was just holding that belt. Rose Namajunas just had went out there and laid an egg, literally, against Carla Esparza. And I think if Rose Namajunas would have been even slightly more aggressive in that fight, I think she absolutely um, would have won that and should have won that against Carla Esparza. But she didn't. And, they ended up giving the fight to Esparza. But she never was the best in the division, if I'm going to be honest. And Zhang Weili is just one of those generational athletes that only comes along once in a generation. She's just such an athletic lady, and she just dominated Carla Esparza, and I was kind of expecting that to happen. So Zhang Weili is the champ. She's the champ again. Who's going to be up next? I don't know. Um, does Rose get that shot? I don't know, man. She's gonna have to come in and really prove to fight fans that she's willing to come in there and put on a good performance. Because she really went out there and laid an egg in that last fight with Carla Esparza. So, maybe they give her the first shot at Wei Lee, especially since she's beat her. Um, she's beat her twice, actually. Um, but I think it's one of those things. If it happens again, she's not going to be able to skate to a victory. She's going to have to go in there and really, really, really put her away. Oh man, Pereira versus Izzy. Um, I saw where Izzy seems to be taking the loss like like a true man, like a true champ, the champ that he was. Um, I thought it was a little bit of an early stoppage, if I'm being honest. And I know that's kind of the theme. Eh, you know, Probably wouldn't have changed anything. It was probably only a matter of time when you're hurt like that and you got a big, huge, heavy guy like Pereira, bearing down on you, throwing strikes and throwing hooks. I mean, it's probably just an eventuality that he was going to go out, but I just hated to see the ref step in when he was still on his feet like that, and he was moving his head, and I mean it could have been one or two more strikes before he just face planted. But he's the champ. He's been the reigning champ for years. Years he's been holding down that division. Let the guy go out on his shield, man. Let the guy go unconscious if he wants to. I think sometimes these refs just, they're so concerned about taking backlash for letting guys take too much damage. And, when you got a fighter like Israel Adesanya who's been holding down that division for so long, I just hate that. I feel like Izzy would have rather just been clean, knocked out on his face in the canvas, had to wake him up 30 seconds later. Hey, hey, Izzy, you all right? You all right? Smack him in the face a little bit. I think he would have rather had that than for Mark Not So Goddard to jump. Wasn't Goddard? I think it was Goddard that jumped in and saved him. And I hate to see that. But this fight was quite honestly very typical of their first two fights, which were in kickboxing. Izzy, I don't care what anybody says, and I was arguing with my son about this last night. He wanted Pereira to win because he thinks he's going to be a more exciting champion who finishes guys, and that could very well be true. Um, Izzy was winning that fight. Izzy was winning their first two fights in kickboxing, but it's one of those things where Pereira has that great equalizer. He has that X factor, which is that power, and he has power that Izzy will just never have. And I'm not saying he's not a skilled kickboxer, but Izzy was winning that fight. Izzy was pretty significantly ahead, in my opinion. I think it's better. I think his movements are better. His footwork, his combinations, his kicks are definitely better. You know, uh, that's one of the reasons I hated that the ref stopped it so quickly because Izzy was winning that fight. But again, you can't take anything away from Pereira. The, plenty of folks have tried to land on Izzy, tried to get Izzy in trouble like that and put him on skates and, get themselves in a situation where they were able to finish him or have a ref jump in, and they haven't been able to do it. Pereira obviously has the ability to do that with Izzy, so you can't take anything away from him. But Pereira is the new champion. I'm not going to lie. I really, really feel like they may, in spite of the fact that Izzy has lost 3 fights now to this guy, one in UFC, two in kickboxing. I still think there's going to be a fourth fight just because it's clear that if Izzy can stay away from that bomb, and he could beat him. He could beat him. And he had Pereira in trouble a couple of times as well. Man, I think it was into the second round. He had him hurt. He had him on skates, and it actually ended. I think Pereira was literally saved by the bell at the end of that second round. But anyway, Pereira won fair and square. He's the champion. So we'll see what's next for him if Izzy gets that immediate rematch or you know, put Bo Nickel up there. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, Bo Nickel. Thank you, honey. Mm, mm. So I'm gonna go and eat this food, but Bo Nickel, Bo Nickel. I don't think Pereira will be able to keep him from taking him down. Everybody's like, "You're stupid, man." Bo Nickel hasn't even had his first fight in the UFC. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you, that guy's the one. That guy's the one. I think he could go in there right now and fight for a title and give people problems. He's that good, that explosive, and his wrestling is just so heads and shoulders above anybody in that division. I just don't think anybody's going to be able to stop him, if I'm being honest. Thank you guys for watching the channel. And if you like the content, please do like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Peace.